Merkley.
Thank you,
Senator
Madam.
Corcoran.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to be here at my first meeting of the Appropriations Committee, and I certainly look forward to engaging in these types of discussions as we wrestle as representatives of our respective states on both sides of the aisle on how to take our nation forward and restore a thriving economy, a growing economy that will bring us back on track. And that's what the discussion is all about. And I wanted to ask Controller Werfel, if we take the Budget Control Act, combine it with sequestration and the impact on interest, and we total all that up, how much is the savings? Ballpark.
So the Budget Control Act had roughly $1 trillion in deficit reduction. The sequester would impact the deficit by an additional $1.2 trillion.
So about 2.2, and I had, if you threw in the interest on the, from the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities, they had $600 billion on the Budget Control Act on defense, $900 billion on non-defense, an additional $250 in interest savings. So it's a larger number. I'm not sure why the discrepancy, but is that more or less than the $600 billion in revenue that is coming out of the December 31st deal?
It's obviously more.
By a factor, by a small amount? How
By
much?
a significant amount.
Okay, basic math, 3 to 4 times as much.
Exactly.
So when I hear folks on both sides of the aisle talking about a 50-50 plan for revenue and expenditure reductions, is that anywhere close to what's being pursued now with sequestration?
No.
To have that balanced plan with sequestration have to be replaced by revenue.
To achieve more balance, yes.
Let me ask you another question. Is there any real difference between a $5,000 tax credit and a $5,000 expenditure on a similar program?
From the perspective of on the
Either
budget
achieving
deficit,
the program or the cost on the budget?
I don't want to speak to the program mission, but the budget impact should be the same.
If I spend $5,000 in affordable housing and a tax credit, I spend $5,000 in affordable that I appropriate, isn't it basically the same $5,000?
Yes.
So, when we're talking about spending, why aren't we talking about across-the-board reductions in spending on tax loopholes, credits and deductions?
I think the president believes we should be talking about that.
Well, so there are a series of things that I'd like to see. We're spending $85 billion on a sequestration as it now stands over this coming year. There is a lot more spending than that on tax loopholes.
Yes.
And if wouldn't we be closer to that balance we're talking about if we close some tax loopholes, get back to the regular order, and stop going from crisis to crisis and putting our entire economy at risk in the process?
Yep, that's the fundamental guiding principles that the president wants for a solution.
Secretary Duncan, there is the Edwards-Gingrich payroll tax loophole proposal. That goes back a ways, but it had to do with the gaming of corporate status, saved about $9 billion. Would it make more sense to end the spending on that tax loophole or to cut Head Start, special education, and Title I?
The best investment we can make for the future is to get our children off to a great start. We know the 7-to-1 bang for the buck to not invest in children with disabilities and poor children makes no sense whatsoever. We have to invest in education. We have to invest smartly and wisely, but we cannot cut that investment. And
Secretary Donovan, there is the stock option loophole and offshoring of U.S. profits. There's just the offshoring of U.S. profits, about $24 billion cost. I'm not talking about the numbers being exactly even here, but just in concept, does it make sense to close this tax loophole or to cut a vast number of the affordable housing programs that your department oversees?
Our entire budget for our Section 8 voucher program, which is the single largest help, over 50% of the folks that we serve, elderly, people with disabilities, that entire budget is less than the $24 billion that you talked about. And I absolutely believe it's a central investment that we need to make and continue to make. The costs of cutting it are devastating to families. They raise healthcare costs. They raise other costs for local communities because when families are not housed, they actually cost us more.
Well, I have looked at just a small number of these tax loopholes, including the oil tax loopholes, the one that offshores, basically subsidizes the offshoring of our jobs, our manufacturing. Just 4 of them total up to about $90 billion, or roughly the same amount as sequestration for the coming year. Doesn't it make sense for us to shut down some of these loopholes and basically protect programs that support core services to the middle class and get our act together on having both the budget process and the appropriations process in a regular order?
Yes,
Anyone's welcome to.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm out of time, and thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I'd like to now turn to Senator Cochran. And Senator Cochran, you weren't here when I thanked you during the time of Senator Inouye's passing, where you were the ranking member. I know under the Republican rules there was a change because of time limits.